what's up knitters? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that's very close to my heart, and you've probably read the title. It's a rant basically about student debts, student fees, student loans, all of that lovely stuff. Not just me talking aimlessly to the camera and expressing my anger at these issues. It is a response to an article that I read last week that was published in The Independent. Let's just get straight into this because I've got nothing more to say other than my sheer disappointment in this article. And I don't really read the news. I'm not one of those people that likes to read it. I like to keep myself in a little bubble, which is, yeah, it can be classed as a bit ignorant, but I mean, I'd rather not be depressed 24/7. So I clicked on this article in The Independent, written by a lovely lady called Rachel Pells. I don't actually know her, but, you know, I mean, if the whole article is written by her, I mean, you need to kind of buck up a little bit. And the article title is "University Debt's So High, Students are Suffering Increased Mental Health Problems and Can't Afford Food." So when I read this, I was like, yeah, I relate totally to this. I want to read this because it's the topic, you know. I'm a student and I have actually physically felt my mental state deteriorate this past half of the second year. That I've just finished the first half of my second year, and I've definitely felt some form of mental health thing come about, and it's not severe, but I could definitely feel as though I would have probably had a mental breakdown if I wasn't with Matt here to support me and kind of keep me sane. I'm just going to go straight in with my facts and figures. We're going to talk about the article because I personally feel that the article does not come back to the point, and it does not offer a solution at all. Just an open discussion and a lot of for and against arguments, but that is it. It's a really poorly written article, and I will leave it in the description box below. It's a lot of pushing the blame onto other people and not accepting responsibility. So these are my facts and figures, and sorry if I keep looking off, but I've written some notes. So this is probably the same for the majority of people, but my fees are £9,000 a year. My loan is £3,820 a year, and that is split into 3 segments. So that averages about £1,260 for, it's basically to get you through 3 months of the year. So they give it to you every 3 months or every 3 or 4 months. And that is to pay rent, bills, food, you know, all of that lovely stuff. Then you've got your books that the university deem core or primary text that you have to have in your possession for you to do well at the course. You know, I mean, you've got the library at your disposal, but they've only got about 3 or 4 copies of each book, so if you want those, you need to get in there early and read those. The problem with that is it wasn't so much a problem in my first year because it was just one module throughout it was like three or 4 modules, 3 modules I think, throughout the entirety of the year. Second year is split into 2 parts. That's 6 modules in total, and that is averaging about 10 books per module, so that's about 60 books that the university have deemed primary text for us to have, that they will not provide for us. We have to provide them for ourselves. This is all before you talk about getting there, so you've got your travel costs, petrol, insurance, train, bus, tram, you know, you've got a lot of travel costs on top of that. And yes, they offer student discounts, but you have to pay that in a lump sum, and people will turn to their student loan to do this because they've got that money there and they can pay it then. The article basically blames tuition fees and rising living costs as the reason that students are suffering these mental breakdowns. And basically the article says students are experiencing overwhelming stress levels and that they can't afford food and rent. As a result of this, students are being chased by debt collectors because they've opted to eat basically than paying their rent because they need to survive and be alive in order to pay their rent. So it's just basically a vicious cycle. As a result of this, as a result of the student loan, they're getting credit cards, extending their overdraft, debts, short-term loans, you name it, they're getting into more and more debt. In the article there is a lovely gentleman, absolutely lovely gentleman called David Webber, and he basically blames the banks for not helping their young customers manage their finances. The problem with this statement, Dave, is that managing finances has nothing to do with it if you do not have the correct amount of finances to manage in the first place. The thing with this is you are giving us basically £1 on a platter and going, there you go. And I mean, I really want to know what these finances are. So my rent is £495 a month. And on top of that, it's about 100 and something pounds worth of bills. So that's 600, nearly £700. And if I was on my own, and I had £1,260 over 3 months, that would be more than gone over 2 months. So that had dried up. What would I have been doing then? Because I've moved up here with Matt, we can split the bills, and you know, a lot of people go into shared accommodation because they just can't afford it. It's just ridiculous. And this is all before we mention the fact that students have to look for work while they're at university. They have to get a part-time job, and this is it's quite easy to get a job, I have to say, but it's casual work, it's 0-hour contracts, it's a lot of moving around trying to make ends meet basically, and it's just it's stressful on top of that, because you're going, I need to work X amount of hours to pay the rent that I need to live up here in order to get an education. So then this brings me on to this next quote. People assume students spend their money on nights out, but I regularly have to choose not to go out so I can buy food. I've also had to miss classes and delay assignments when shifts become available, and I have to take them when I can. It's really stressful, constantly thinking about money when I should be focusing on my studies, and I could not agree. This person has moved away from their home life and left whatever life behind to come up here to get a better education and to come to university, only to find themselves missing out on that because they have to work in order to live. It's so backwards. It is just ridiculous. On top of this, there's a lady in the article, she is definitely for the students, and I respect her so much for being on our side. While students are suffering from lack of money, extortionate interest charges are still being added to their loans. It is exploitation at its best. The government has created this issue and now needs to remedy it with fair financing for students. At least someone gets it, and this is getting out of hand now, because we're already in an extortionate amount of debt, and then being put in a position to take out loans and take out credit cards and all of this stuff, getting increasingly into more debt snidely, and then this just basically fucks up the economy even more, and I really don't think that the government get it. They just don't understand it. If I look at some of my mum's friends that went to university back when the fees were £3 grand a year, they have literally paid it back by the time they're 40, I think. So they're in their 40s, mid to late 40s. They have paid their loans back. If they kept the loans as it were, then we'd ultimately be pushing the economy forward, because a lot more people would be able to pay it back. But when we decide we want to go to university and the looming impending doom of death is above our head, and we are being trained to go, don't think about it as debt, don't think about it, push it to the back of your head because you're not going to be able to pay it back anyway, that has got to be fucking the economy so much more than having the debts at a manageable cost and having more people pay it back. Ugh. So even with all of this hard evidence, the system is just screwed basically. The article is still blaming the banks for this position that the government have put students in. It's saying that greater visibility around spending habits will make people more aware of their bank balance. Now listen, have you ever met a student that is not aware of their bank balance? Because I sure have. Every single person I've come into contact with is acutely acutely aware of their bank balance and is acutely aware that there is no money in it. I would love to know what these spending habits are and what they think we do. The lady or gentleman that I quoted earlier said that the misconception around students is that they go out all the time, but you have to choose, you have to pick and choose. I don't go out all the time. I think I can count the amount of times I've been out on one hand since I've been here, and the amount of things I've had to turn down with my friends because I simply can't afford it at all. So as students, it's safe to say we are pulled together in this little umbrella called the underclass, where we are literally at the bottom of the food chain in terms of society. The article doesn't conclude. It just says, you know, going back to the title of this increasing mental health problems and students not being able to eat, it doesn't conclude. It just blames the banks for not letting us have more insight into our spending habits, instead of going, oh well, since the government raised the fees to $9 grand and the government do this, and they basically base your loan off of what your parents earn as well. So if your parents on paper have had a really, really good year financially in terms of tax and everything like that, you are getting the least amount of loan you could possibly get, and it doesn't matter if they are in the shit, as it were, presently, because they look at the previous tax year, and if they've had such a good year that year, you are getting that much from the government. I'm just going to conclude this rant, as it were, by saying that before I came to university, I would constantly see protests on the television, outside Parliament, outside loads of places, in London, in and around everywhere, of students, and with these big boards about loans and fees and debt, and I just stop and think and go, how stupid are you? You knew from the very beginning the amount of debt and the lack of money you were going to experience, so why did you even do it? I now know that that is not the case. It's not as simple as that, because why should we not all have the same chance? It's just frustrating how it's still, you know, to do well and be comfortable at university, it's still having that stream of endless income coming from rich parents. You don't want to do that, and you can't do that. You're going to struggle ultimately, since they don't take into consideration the amount of people in the household either. So you could have a family of however many, but they think that if on paper it looks all good, your parents' income looks good, it doesn't matter. They do not take into account the siblings' mouths they have to feed or anything like that. And this kind of stems around to the fact that it is absolutely impossible for people nowadays to move out until they reach their 30s at least, because the cost of living is just extortionate. Let me know what you think in the comments about what you've experienced. Are you suffering from a mental breakdown? Are you suffering from lack of food and shelter? You know, I'd love to know, because these articles are great, but they're for the independent and they are pushed under the rug. It's just, they can go, oh yeah, pat on the back, we've talked about students for this year, let's go on to something else. They are going to be brushed under the rug. I think it's high time that students kind of pull together and go, we are sick of this bullshit, and really stand up and make a difference. And I know this is what students have been protesting for ages, but you know, we have to continue the fight instead of just turning a blind eye and going, well, that's how it is, because it's not fair. Especially when they're handing $30 million out to BBC Scotland for a new channel. Where are the priorities at? Shall we get England and Britain out of the economical crisis before we start going woo willy-nilly? Come on guys, get your shit together. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear what, like, after you've read the article, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on the matter. If you're not subscribed, go and subscribe. I make new videos every Tuesday at 5. Hit that like button and maybe even turn my bell on so you'll be notified every single time I make a new video. Thank you so much for watching again, guys. See you next week. Bye.